Okay, hello everyone. It's January 10 JupyterLab call. Uh, it's 9 people here. Hello everyone. You can find link to the agenda in the chat. I will post it another time just in case. Please put your items on the agenda if you have any more items to add. Put your names as well into the table. And I see there is a first point by Jason. Jason, you can start, you can go if you would like to.
Oh, yeah, sure. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Couple quick notes. One is that there is currently no host for next week. So if you're available, I am not. But if you're available next week, please sign up on the Team Compass. I dropped a link into the chat and the HackMD. The other is, and I appreciate whoever pasted in the link to the Team Compass for merging the projects. There's currently a plan, and it seems like we're approaching consensus to go forward with it, to merge the notebook and the JupyterLab projects. So I was curious about the effects on things like merging the meetings, the councils, any other logistics. Does anyone have updates on that, or just curious about what the status is of that?
Thanks for bringing that up. That's actually something I wanted to discuss as well. So, but I saw you posted it on the agenda, so that's perfect. I don't think there's been more discussed than what is currently the issue. It's been open for a week, approximately, and regarding the meetings, I think there is another issue already, and the consensus there was also positive to say, okay, we can just discuss Notebook 7 related issues and work as part of the JupyterLab meeting. But for merging sub-projects, it is indeed a little bit more involved in a way, even though in practice it would probably be simple. And what that would mean, I think, is kind of what is already being discussed in this issue is probably merging the two consoles together. That means taking the union of the two console members and just saying that this is part now of a new Jupyter sub-project. Yeah, the motivations are already listed in the issue. By consensus, I don't know yet if everybody has had time to look at it. Maybe I mean, I don't think it's a big hurry. Maybe it's good to let people, have time to know about that if they were away for a few weeks before maybe taking a decision. But I guess if someone has concerns or objections, then maybe it's also good to hear that.
I see some people are interested in delineating the scope of front ends versus back end.
Yeah, the question is, should the new sub-project, in case this merge happens, be called something else? Should it be still JupyterLab? Should it be JupyterLab and Notebook? Should it be Jupyter Frontend? What does that mean? I think it's still open for suggestions. I don't think there is a... I think Jupyter Frontend, I think, was already discussed casually before, just like that as an idea.
Yeah, there's some precedent for that, I think, already.
Yeah, just
and
to
I guess
summarize
kind of,
bit.
I was going to say, I think when we're saying Jupyter front end, we're thinking of, Jupyter applications that are built off of the lab API, right? Essentially.
Yeah, so currently Project Jupyter officially supports two frontends, two web-based frontends to be more precise, which are JupyterLab and Jupyter Notebook. And that's the idea, is to bring them together more closely, especially now since Jupyter Notebook 7 is very similar to JupyterLab.
Mick just mentioned Qt console. Is Qt console still alive? I thought it was going away or something. Does anyone know?
Yeah, good question. Good question. There is also, I think there is an issue. I think wasn't it about distributing Qt console by default? Maybe in one of the other Jupyter packages.
Yeah, it's just in the Jupyter meta package, just because Qt is not fun for most people to install. Or PyQt specific, PyQt and all the other, because it pulls in the Chromium thing, and it's terrible. It's terrible, and it's license encumbered, and no one knows what's going on. So, yeah, but I mean, I think the point is sound. It's like Jupyter pixels, right? It's like the pixels that people actually see. Most of those pixels occur in the browser. Some of them are in rendered frame buffers. Whatever. We were just having a conversation about Godot. Maybe there's a game engine future that's not reliant on the browser at some point. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of big tent. I think the bigger the tent, the better. You would want some of those concerns to show up. You would want the concerns of third-party clients to show up there as well. Like,
yeah,
the clients are the door handle that people use Jupyter with. Unless they're straight up DevOps and only deploy Jupyter Hub and don't care and don't use it. Like most people, when you ask what is Jupyter, it's like this stuff that I click on in the browser and it looks like Bootstrap. So
I almost think another name could be Jupyter applications. And I think to me, there's maybe a distinction to be drawn between, I think kind of what Nick was hinting at with applications that are maybe not built with the lab API, but kind of build a similar user experience maybe.
It's anything accessibility cares about. Let's just all
know about that, but okay.
Well, I mean, it's anything outside of the terminal. Are we does IPython get it? Does Jupyter console at the TUI? Is that part of the game? So it's what are we giving?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, go for it.
No, my thing's kind of unrelated. You should continue, Nick.
No, I certainly shouldn't.
Go ahead.
I got nothing useful. I don't know. It's just like which of these, if there was. So a thing I just saw was this tool called Access Kit.
Nick, does anyone else hearing a crackling, or is that just me?
Nick, your mic is unusually crunchy at the moment.
Oh, I'll just stop. I don't know what's going on. I've been having problems.
Okay.
Being attacked by forces from beyond the veil. The thing I was going to add, Jason, is it okay if I verbalize the comment you left in response to Ely?
Please do.
Yeah, okay. So I guess the experience that saying in triage, some of the users have difficulty reconciling Jupyter Notebook, like the interface with Jupyter Notebook, the file format. I would definitely agree with that. I would say more than some in my experience. I think that's most, if not all, unless they develop something.
Yeah, I want to jump in here and just reiterate that. Personally, I've observed, people at my company, people at other companies. When I went to JupyterCon in France, there was a student who rode in an Uber with me after the train was stuck, and she worked with Jupyter. But again, I asked her, do you use Lab or Notebook? I don't know. I don't know the difference.
Yeah, people who we would consider power users, I would even say, basically, if they don't develop or set up the thing. Yeah.
And Rick Wagner from security brought this up because he's heard the same feedback from a bunch of a bunch of the users that he interacts with. And this has been a topic in the docs working group as well, and something the EC has you know, discussed on our charter. So like and you know, of course that ties into what do we do, how do we communicate that stuff on Jupyter.org, for instance. It's like a big question that it's a problem, and I feel like we need to address that in some way.
Well, and the reason I was bringing it up is I think it's very easy to discuss name potentials for a long time, and I don't think that's always bad, but I think my question is ultimately, who does the naming of a sub-project matter for? Like, I don't have an answer to this. I don't know if the sub-projects are supposed to be like general user, you know, understandable where they need to go for things, or if it's really just for people who are affiliated with the project enough to be impacted directly by governance, right? Like, I don't have the answer to that question. And then also, what information then is important to that audience? And that would be my thing overall, because I'm seeing some of the things, like when I'm seeing the suggestion for front ends, I know what that means. That doesn't bother me. If you're trying, right, like I don't know
I
if
think
that will mean
it's
things
jargon.
outside. Yeah, exactly. So I think
For
it kind of
sure.
depends.
I
If
think-
we're doing it for us, maybe that's fine. If
Right.
users need to find the projects, probably the lab and notebook, I think, would be my vote. So
I
just
might
bringing the perspective.
suggest prioritizing what will get the right people to these meetings, because I think for a lot of people that is the first time they think about sub projects, is they need to show up to a meeting with a question, and that's a clear like ramp for engagement for contributors.
Yeah, see, this is why, you know, I think your explicit lab and notebook is fine. I was thinking about Jupyter applications or Jupyter apps, and like as you pointed out, right, front end I think is jargon and kind of is going to push certain groups away. So I think something like a Jupyter apps or something would also be good, because I think most people have a good understanding of what that means.
I like the applications stuff, although applications also have back-end components. I mean, I understand the resistance to jargon, but if people are looking for like developers, that's, you know, the name effectively filters to people who are interested in.
Do we want to filter? Because I think it
Well,
what like
sometimes we
do we
get-
want like engineers or other non-programmers to come to these meetings, right? Which we do,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it's interesting because when I see things come into triage, we sometimes get what I would consider to be software bugs. People saying, I clicked the button A and B happened and I expected C to happen. We also get what I call, and I mean this in the kindest way, idea people. People who say, I have a grand idea for JupyterLab. I think that JupyterLab should do this big idea. I'm not a developer. This is something that's going to require a great deal of engineering. And those are the more difficult ones because we usually end up accepting those, but we accept those with a sort of, okay, now you're going to have to do the work of like owning this as a project, and without the kind of corporate structure that guides larger organizations and teams therein. So how do we accommodate both the software developers who need to fix the bugs or build something for a particular use, and the bigger ideas that are really going to move Jupyter forward and differentiate and create new products potentially?
I kind of think some of those people can be redirected to maybe the Jupyter community group, for instance. And honestly, like I think it's good. I know that certainly there are tickets that are just not good tickets, but like I think it's a good problem to have, that we have people trying to think of things, and then we're in the triage meeting, especially like we deal with them and we reject them if they're not well formed. And so like there's value even in, you know, people presenting ideas, because that's a place where discussion can happen. It becomes discoverable. But certainly, as always, it's tough to accommodate every type of user because we have such a diverse user base.
So in practice, users won't really know about this, right? Just like they don't really know about governance if they are not really interested in the Jupyter governance. It's like if someone wants to install Notebook, they just do pip install Notebook, and they don't really care whether it's developed by this group of people or this group of people. I guess the main reason for now for merging these two projects is more for the Jupyter developers, so that they could be more aware of how, for example, how Notebook 7 could benefit from changes that are done in JupyterLab, just like now, but maybe have the two groups work together more closely, especially when for example, we make changes to improve accessibility upstream in lab, and we want to see the effects of it in Notebook 7. And yeah, really putting Notebook 7 kind of the same level as lab.
Yeah.
And for now, it's more like of a downstream application, technically, because we need to wait for releases of JupyterLab and potentially add more round trips in case there are some issues in lab that need to be fixed again, and so on. So merging the two sub-projects won't change that really in the short term, because for now the code bases are still kind of separate. But it could be interesting because then on the day-to-day work on GitHub, we could have like this kind of Notebook 7, but maybe more generally like lab-based applications considered when we make decisions, especially with design or sometimes also technical decisions. So that would be like the first, I think the first benefit of merging those two sub-projects. Yeah, and then
Yeah, absolutely.
There was also another mention, I think, of I saw NP Convert mentioned in the chat. In the long run, yeah, why not? Especially since these kind of projects, there are some projects that probably don't even belong to any Jupyter sub-project, so they could find a new home in that new sub-projects in case they need one, because otherwise, like, it could be hard to know who should be responsible for a repo on GitHub. And I think that recently that was the case with NBDime, which is not part of any sub-project, I think. Could also be under the front-end one if we decide to call it this way. Yeah, maybe a technical, well, more of an issue when it comes to dealing with this with teams, GitHub teams, and so on, might be the fact that the orgs are separate. So we have the JupyterLab org, but we also have the Jupyter org where the notebook codebase lives. So you don't get all of the advantages of having everything under the same org, such as transferring issues and mentioning teams directly. That doesn't work across orgs. But I don't know if that's a big friction point in practice. We could see.
Skills are definitely transferable between JupyterLab and Notebook. So like another benefit would be potentially more exposure to Notebook code base and issues, and maybe more people would be interested to work in it, which would be nice. Okay, do we have anything else to discuss about this point? Does anyone else would like to speak about merging Notebook, JupyterLab sub-projects and the impact that it would have for us? Okay, so another issue that Jason raised is we need a host for the next week. He posted about it in the chat, and we have a volunteer already, Gabriel. Thank you very much. So that's done. Let's proceed. I see.
By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if I know we have a host for next week, thank you, Gabriel. But if you'd like to host another meeting in the future, we have openings for those meetings as well.
Yep. That's a really good point. Please sign up to host a meeting. We don't have a backup host for the foreseeable future. So I hope if no one would volunteer at some point, yeah, I think we should be comfortable to self-host. Awesome. So let's proceed to the next point on the agenda. I see there are 2 bullet points in the additional discussions. There is a bullet point by Jason W. Review JupyterLab release blockers. And there is another bullet point by, I'm sorry if I will butcher his name, Ian D. Action to take on some pull request. Jason, would it be okay if we will discuss the second bullet point first, because I was
just gonna suggest the same thing. Let's go. Let's cede the floor to Ian. Go ahead.
Yep. Ian, please.
Yeah, so I was working on a pull request a few weeks ago. It seems like I was mostly working with Michael Krasowski, and I basically made some changes, and he said it looked okay, but one thing left was to decide when to merge this. So for this pull request, I wanted to backport it to the 3.6 branch as well. And another thing was that I think Michael was saying we I guess need to decide whether to treat the change as a bug fix, and in that case, it should be included in the 4.1. And if it's considered an optional enhancement, it would need to wait until the 4.2 release. There's a comment about that at the bottom of the PR, and I was just wondering if that could be cleared up in this meeting. And I can talk a bit about the PR if necessary as well.
So I'm looking at this issue, this pull request, and it's tagged for 36X, but you're merging this into the main branch, but we don't typically cut JupyterLab 3 releases from the main branch.
Well, it would preferably be in. It would end up in.
Oh, I see.
both,
I'm
right?
sorry. I'm looking at the most recent comments and
Okay.
doing the backport separately. Okay, so this would be 2 different merges.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of comments, Mike gave like a oral looks good to me.
Oh, sorry.
Like Mike said that that the PR looks good for him in the last comment in the PR.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at Mike's most recent comment. If we were treating it as a bug fix, my opinion would be that we should enable it by default and include in 4.1. If we consider it an enhancement, we need to wait until 4.2.
And there are pending changes from Fred. Pending change request. So I guess that technically would be it would be nice if Fred could give it a look and give it a go ahead on the requested changes. Is Frederick in the meeting today? Nope. So maybe it would be nice to just ping Fred in the thread and ask him to give his change requested a look and go ahead if everything looks good, something like that. Because looking at the status of the PR, that's what like blocking it, right?
Right. So in that case, would we be merging this into 4.1 then, or including it in 4.1?
Well, that's a separate question.
Yeah, I think if we
Okay,
don't do anything else, I think it would likely go into 4.1 because we don't have a separate branch for 401X yet. We would
Right.
once 410 is out. I was also curious. I'm looking at your code review here. It says kernel is still initializing, code cells will not be executed. I'm curious about what that means. Does it mean that the code cells just will never be executed, or will they be run when the kernel initializes?
It means that if the user clicks run cells, any of the run cells buttons while and tries to execute a cell while the kernel is still in the initializing state, nothing will happen. It's just a notification that like they're like selecting this action didn't do anything. And then once the kernel initializes, it'll work as normal.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
trying to.
it's a nice feature actually because it does sort of feel like a bug, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Sounds good then. I'll ping Frederick again. Would it also suffice if Michael approved it as well? Just if anyone gives a go ahead.
Yeah, like, can we expedite this at all for him?
Yeah, I'm just making a suggestion about rephrasing the notification in a more like positive way. Because
Well,
it wasn't clear.
You could maybe say, please wait for cell execution to begin.
I said you can run code cells when the kernel has initialized.
Yeah.
As opposed to just code cells will not be executed implies that they just can never be run.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Because we don't do we display, I don't think we display a notification when the kernel has initialized. We have other UI affordances that make it clear the kernel is ready.
Yeah, there's no notification. It's just I think it just shows the state next to the kernel.
Do you
in
think
that,
it's
like,
worthwhile
bottom.
having, I mean, this is out of scope for your pull request, but do you think it's a good enhancement to like have a notification that the kernel's ready?
Don't we, so up in the little kernel status indicator, right? What is there something, is there a initialization state for that little icon?
I mean, there
So
is, it updates, but it doesn't, especially to a new user, they may not be aware of, because it's icons. It's not, it doesn't use text unless you
yeah.
hover over it. It just looks like a symbol.
It's a tough question. I think definitely the first step is to get this warning in for sure.
Yeah, I can file an issue. Maybe we can have a design discussion about it.
Yeah. But
But
this would definitely be
again,
good
Ian,
for,
it doesn't block your change. I think your change should continue to go forward if people are otherwise happy with it.
It may
I
be
see.
interesting to make it optional behind the settings, and also
Yes.
for accessibility purpose, having an alert, like a notification.
that stuff could be done as part of a, that could be done like as part of a future iteration, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Frederick, could you take a look at the PR again when you get the chance? I don't think you're in the meeting. I don't think I saw you in the meeting earlier.
Yeah,
I will just wait for the wording of JSON, as English is not my mother tongue. But from the code point of view, I think it's good.
Okay. Yeah, if you could add the approval, that'd be great. Oh, I saw that Jason added something. I see.
Yeah, and you
Okay.
should just be,
Yeah.
if you agree with that, you can just merge that in.
Yeah, I agree. I'll merge it and then sounds good.
Oh, I just want to say thanks for working on that. And I don't know how many times you've been through the approval process, but I don't want you to get disheartened for sure. Yeah, thank you for doing this. And then yeah, I hope hopefully we'll have expedited this for you and kind of moved it forward so that you don't feel like it's languishing.
Anyways, yeah, I appreciate the help.
Yep. Thank you, Ian, for working on this.
I will just comment maybe on the PR directly that we discussed it today, so and agree to merge it for 4.1 so that it's written.
Okay, so that PR in question, I think, has changes requested from you, Fred. If you would want to give it a look and like dismiss that request for changes or whatever, you can do that. Okay, other than that, if there are nothing else to discuss here, we can proceed. Let's do that then. And next point on the agenda is by Jason W. Review JupyterLab release blockers.
Yeah, we typically do that in the off the record portion.
Okay.
So does anybody else have any topics they want to discuss on the recording?
Then I see a note in the chat. I will stop the recording momentarily. Sound will play.